What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I'm going to break down some big news that just came out as we just got earnings from Amazon and Apple. And this may affect the market going into tomorrow as we have other pieces of news. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. Moomoo is an amazing global brokerage account that consists of many exclusive offers. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 25 in total. You deposit $5,000 and you're guaranteed 60. Just keep the money in the account for at least 60 days. You'll also qualify for an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash, and the offer ends on June 3rd. I also promote this because if you guys keep at least $100 in the account, you'll qualify for free level 2 data, which is very useful for understanding market insights and what's happening with the options chains. So please check out my link down below. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So looking at SPY and many futures right now, the market is selling off a bit after we got earnings from Apple and Amazon. And I'm going to start off the video by talking about them. Right now, Amazon's down 2.3%. It's currently in a range, so it's not really selling off too hard, but it's a bit in the red. What's affecting the market more is going to be Apple, because not only is Apple a giant, but it's also selling off about 4.2% right now. It's also down below our key EMAs, which is not the best of signs. So what's going on? Why on earth are Apple and Amazon selling off, and how is this going to affect the markets? Let's talk about this. Starting things off, just know that for today, we have Amazon and Apple, which just announced their earnings. And then tomorrow, we have a couple more like ExxonMobil, but nothing too serious. The market's going to see a big reaction to this once we open up tomorrow. Companies all over the US are rushing to ship goods into the US ahead of the tariffs that have been coming out. So keep that in mind. That's some very, very important news, at least to start things off. So with that being said, what does this mean for us, at least moving forward? Well, looking at Amazon, they ended up topping their Q1 estimates, but they did have softer guidance, which is what partially hurt the share price. Their revenue is at $155.6 billion with EPS at $1.59, which is not bad whatsoever. However, when it comes to their guidance, I just want to mention that they guided for a midpoint at about $161.5 billion in revenue, with their operating income at about $15.3 billion. The operating income was kind of weak. That was a little bit below expectations by over $2 billion. And that's quite a difference. That's part of why the share price is down. There's also been some talk about how the tariffs may complicate their future. So keep that in mind. That's some big news. That's part of why the share price is down right now. So that's why we saw Amazon getting some scrutiny. And that's why the share price is dipping a bit with some complications because of these tariffs, and also because of what's happening with their overall guidance. On top of this, when it comes to Apple, I just wanted to say that Apple had decent earnings. Okay, we're going to start off with that. They generated $95.4 billion in revenue. That's above expectations. $1.65 per share was their EPS, which is also above expectations. Their sales were up 5%. But one thing that's worth mentioning is that the sales in China slipped to about $16 billion, below the projections of $17 billion. And their overall margins were not way too bad, just a little bit short of some expectations. Despite that, they announced a quarterly dividend of about 26 cents per share with a $100 billion share buyback program, which is quite good. But what hurt the share price is the fact that when you look at their numbers, Tim Cook is announcing that the tariffs may cause them an additional $900 million in costs, at least just for the next quarter itself. And they're talking about how the tariffs are going to need some adjusting. So Tim Cook made it very clear that despite this, despite the fact that we had decent earnings, there were some hardships with the tariffs and getting that transition process into bay. And then on top of this, it's going to increase their cost by about $900 million. So, not the best of news, at least from that end. But they did mention that as they adjust, things will once again normalize as they're starting to produce some components in the US and transition to India. So, keep that in mind. That's part of why the share price of Apple is dumping so far. So, what does this mean for the market? Obviously, there's some downside potential looking at SPY and the QQQ, but there are other factors affecting us. Going into tomorrow, it's going to be Friday, May 2nd, 2025 at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 1 hour before the stock market opens. We actually have some important data coming out. We have our unemployment rate coming out, which may cause some volatility. We're expecting it to be around 4.2%. We also have the labor force participation rate, governmental payrolls, and more payrolls data coming out, which may cause some volatility. So get ready for all of this. Unemployment is the most important thing, though, because it's going to give us more insights about what's happening with the labor market. And the Fed is going to be continuing to look at that when it comes to their policies. So please keep all of this in mind. So this will be another factor affecting us. We'll see how things end up going. The market was fearful. It came back to neutral, but we might end up falling back to fear as time goes on. We're still seeing more fear in terms of momentum. We'll see if this turns back down. And then the put to call option ratio has been dipping. This is what's been helping the market fuel upwards, but we'll see if this gets a bounce or not. Also, we'll be watching the VIX to see if we get a breakout. So that's going to be very key. Last but not least, guys, let me just talk about President Trump and his tariffs and give you guys some updates, and I'll break down the charts. So, involving President Trump's tariffs, there's been some headlines coming out that he's threatening new sanctions on China. However, that's not entirely the truth. I want to just clarify these headlines. So, let's break this down. President Trump said that all purchases of Iranian oil or petrochemical products must stop now. Any country or person that buys any amount of oil or petrochemicals from Iran is going to be subject to secondary tariffs. That's what President Trump said. He said that they will not be allowed to do business with the US. But one thing that's worth mentioning is that China is the larger is one of the largest importers of Iranian oil. So could he be trying to increase sanctions on China? I don't know about that, guys, but there are headlines that are suggesting it's a possibility based off what he's implying. So we'll see how that ends up going. Besides that, President Trump has acknowledged the fact that there is some risk about his tariffs, especially from a political standpoint. He mentioned that yes, his tariff they basically have a lot of perception problems, and that he has to try to work to convince people to see how good it's going to be. That's what President Trump has argued. On top of this, he did mention that there's progress being made with China, as he thinks that there is a good chance that the China trade deal is coming very soon. So that's what President Trump mentioned. But on top of this, he also said that there's potential deals coming with India, South Korea, and Japan, not to mention a lot of progress with the EU right now. So that's some good news about the trade deals. We'll see how things end up progressing for the time being, but this is some important news that's worth mentioning. This is what President Trump has been talking about so far. Even though China is denying it, President Trump is saying that progress is being made. In conclusion, President Trump is acknowledging that his tariffs may cause higher prices. He is saying that Americans did vote for this and that it's going to be worth it. He's saying that he has to convince Americans that it's going to be worth it, and he believes he will do it. He's saying that basically China's been screwing over the US and these other countries have been screwing us over for years and years and years, but his tariffs will help bring back fairness, and they're going to bring in billions of dollars per day. He acknowledged that there's going to be some higher prices coming, but he's saying it's going to be worth it. He's also talking about how a lot of trade deals are coming, so that's been pretty decent for the markets. But so far, I don't think it's going to affect the market as much right now because I still think there's some downside coming. So with that being said, now I'm just going to focus on what's happening with the share prices, what's going on with SPY, the QQQ, and the others. So like I said before, Apple and Amazon are selling off, and this is contributing to why SPY is selling off. So I do think we sell off a bit more by tomorrow morning, but there's going to be a very, very big test coming, and let me elaborate on that. So looking at SPY, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually sell off towards our 200 EMA right here at 555. I do think we're going to be testing this, and we'll see if we get some kind of rebound move off this or not. So the bullish case would be we kind of hit 555, then we bounce off of this and try to push back to the 560s for a Friday squeeze. But of course, it also depends on the unemployment numbers and all these different factors. The bearish case is going to be that actually we don't hold 555. If we lose that tomorrow, I think we could be dipping all the way back down towards like 545 or below. That's going to be the more bearish case. What is my prediction? Well, honestly, guys, it depends on what kind of reaction we get. I do want to mention the market's looking a little bit weak here, and that there is a head and shoulders like structure on SPY. If we lose 555, we're going to be at risk of dipping to at least the 550 area, if not 545. So I do think that we will dump to about 555 tomorrow. I can't promise we're going to hold tonight. I do think the odds do favor. We might be dipping to like 545, but we need some confirmation first just to be safe. So look for a test of 555, and we'll see what the reaction looks like. For the QQQ, it's the same setup. So basically, we have this level right over here to be retested. That's going to be this zone right here. If we're bullish on the QQQ, you want to get back above 482. That's basically the support becoming resistance. Get back above 482, then we can bounce. And if we're bearish, you want to see us lose 475 to 476. My prediction is going to be that we might be dipping towards this previous resistance, becoming support at 475 to 476, this level right here. I think we're going to be testing this again, 475 to 476. So we're going to be dipping a couple of points. Then we'll see if the QQQ gets a big bounce or not. If we get a bounce, we're going to be looking for a nice rebound move. If not, we could be dumping all the way down to 471 or below, back down to like 466. So tomorrow, I do anticipate some more downside. I think we dip at least another 4 to 5 points, back down to 475. We'll see if we bounce or not, but there's going to be a risk of us potentially dipping lower if that ends up failing us. I also want to add that on the daily time frame, the QQQ has this big gap. It's going to likely fill, taking us down to 475. So I do expect that as we got this rejection candlestick on the daily, leading to more potential downside. So look for a test of 475 tomorrow. We'll see if we bounce or not. If not, we could dump a lot more. And once again, for SPY, we have a rejection on the 200 EMA, and we could be tipping to fill this gap back down to like 555, and we'll see if we bounce off that or not. But nonetheless, we're looking a little bit more bearish. On the IWM, we're technically just in the middle. I do think that this is going to actually consolidate and maybe see a little bit of downside. If we're bullish, you want to see this thing essentially break 198s to push higher for the 200s. If we're bearish, you want to see us lose 194 to 191. And if that fails us, we could be jumping back down towards 188. My gut tells me that there's going to likely be some consolidation right here, and this might actually sell off a bit towards 191 or below. So keep that in mind. For ES, what I think is going to happen is that we're going to be retesting the same level. So let me pull up the 30 minutes time frame to show you guys this. It looks much more clear on the 30 minutes time frame. So I think that we're going to be dipping over here towards 5600 to 5580. This is previous resistance becoming support. So I do think that that's going to be tested. So in order to be bullish, what you want to see is us test like 5580 to 5600 right over here, and we'll see if we bounce back up to 5636. If we're bearish, you want to see us lose 55.68. If that fails us, we could be jumping back down to the lower 5500s. My prediction is 55.80 is going to be tested. We'll see if we get some kind of rebound move off that or not. Otherwise, we could be dipping it even lower, back down to 55.50 or below for a little bit of a pullback move. And I do think there's a very good chance of that potentially panning out on ES. So watch that very, very closely as time goes on. On NQ, it's the same thing. We have resistance becoming support at 19,600. We could be looking for a retest of 19,000 flat, 19,800, excuse me, before it starts to dip. I think we're going to be retesting 19,680. And we'll see if we bounce off the 19,600s to push back up to 20,000 or not. If we don't, we're going to be dipping all the way down below 19,000. So keep that in mind for a potential pullback. For Bitcoin, we're dipping as well off this divergence. So there's going to be a risk of us dipping even lower. We need to see this get back above at least 96,800. If we can't hold it, I see a risk of us dipping to about 95,974. If that fails us, we could be dipping lower. So I do anticipate the 95,000 area, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. So keep that in mind. For Tesla, we're showing some signs of weakness because as we hit 292, we tend to reject, but as we hit 272 to 275, we tend to get bought back up. So it's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, as you guys could tell. Now, to be bullish, you need to get back above 292, and we're not even close to that right now. We're actually favoring a dip to 275, if not even 272 again. So I do think we test 272 to 275 again after these earnings. We could bounce back up to the 280s if that bounces, and if we hold. If not, we could be dumping to 266 or below if that ends up failing us for a triple top. My gut is telling me that we're going to see a little bit of a dip towards 272 to 275, and then we'll see if it bounces or not. Otherwise, we're favoring downside. But I do think that downside is looking a bit more probable for now on Tesla for a temporary move down. What else could fuel the market to sell off is going to be Nvidia, because what you'll see is that Nvidia is at 111, but there's a big gap to fill back down to 108. So even if this dumps 3 to 4 points, that could actually have a big effect on the markets. We love to reject near 115, and we like to get bought back up near 104. So I wouldn't be surprised if Nvidia dips all the way down to like 109 to 107, unless we get back above 115 to turn bullish, which I don't think is as probable. I think the most likely possibility is 109 to 107. And with that being tested, that would actually cause the market to sell off a bit. So keep that in mind for Nvidia. Apple is now down 4.18%. We are trying to hold around the 205 to 204 zone. If we don't hold 204, I do see 202 to 200 being tested. And if we get back above 208, we're looking for a bounce. My gut tells me that we could be dipping to 202 or below, back down towards the lower levels. And we'll see what kind of reaction we get, especially as time goes on. So please keep that in mind. That's going to be very key for what ends up happening. So please keep this in mind, especially as time progresses. But there's going to be a risk of Apple retesting 204, and we'll see if it holds. Otherwise, there could be some more downside. I also want to add that if 204 fails us, there's a gap to fill all the way down towards 199.5. So it could be dipping a bit more after these earnings. That could also fuel more selling in the stock market. For Netflix, we're just consolidating right now. We'll see if this ends up selling off just a little bit towards 1125, but it's just going to be a temporary small move. For the most part, we're just consolidating. For MSTR, we're looking for essentially 374. We'll see if this holds or not. If it doesn't hold, we could be dipping to like 360, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. So keep that in mind. For Celsius, we're making lower highs as well. We need to get back above 35.5. If not, we could be dipping back down to 34, if not 33.23. So I think the odds favor 34 or below. For Supermicro, we're making lower highs. We're rejecting as well. We need to get back above 33.5 to bounce. If not, we're going to be at risk of dipping to 30. So please keep that in mind as we're rejecting right here. And I think 30 is a stronger possibility as time goes on. For Palantir, we're also dumping back down to about 113.73. I think we're going to be testing this, and also on the 30 minutes time frame. If that fails us, I think we could be dipping all the way down to about 111. So I see 111 to 113 being tested for a little bit more downside. So keep that in mind for Palantir. Unless we get back above 117 to bounce, we're favoring those lower levels. For Rivian, we're looking relatively weak here. We need to get back above 113.78 to bounce. If not, we're favoring I'm sorry, 13.7. I think I said 113. Sorry about that, guys. We need to get back above 13.78 to bounce. If not, we're favoring a move all the way down towards the low 13s. For SoFi, we're looking weak here. If you zoom out, it looks like a sort of like a head and shoulders. Looks kind of weak. We need to get back above 12.6 to rebound. If not, there's going to be a risk of us kind of like dipping towards the low 12s. So I do see some downside coming on SoFi. AMD is looking kind of weak as well. We're sort of gapping down. Needs to get back above 97.5. I think we test 95.36 and we'll see if that holds. If not, we dip more. So keep that in mind. ARM got a big rejection off this head and shoulders. We have to see if this gets back above 116. If not, it could be dipping back down towards like 113 or below. So keep that in mind as there's going to be a risk of 113. I see some downside potential. PayPal is trading sideways right now, so we'll just have to see how it goes. I think that this might retest 65 before it dips back down to 64.74, just trading sideways, not really doing much. We have a double top leg structure on Coinbase. We have to see if this could hold 200. If not, we're looking for a test of 198 or below. On Amazon, I think this just consolidates. I'm not really expecting too much. Might dip a little bit more back down towards like 183, but keep in mind that we're just in a sideways range unless we end up losing 180. I think we might dip to the lower 180s, but then there's going to be some consolidation on it. For Meta, we're showing some weakness. We need to get back above like 572. If not, we're going to be at risk of dipping towards the 560 area to fill that gap. So be very careful over there. For MSTR, I'm sorry, not MSTR, Microsoft, same thing, just kind of like a head and shoulders here. Might dip a little bit to like 420, but then we'll see if we get some kind of balance. It's just a temporary move down. We could be dipping towards like 425 to then 420, and we'll see if we bounce. Google's looking decent, it's making higher highs and higher lows, but I do see the risk of a wedge that could be forming. So it's starting to look like a rising wedge like pattern that's beginning to form on Google like this. So we'll see how this ends up going. Might continue to form the wedge, and we'll see if we get a break here. So be very careful with this. DJT might be dipping towards the low 24 area, so be careful with that. The VIX is also kind of flat. When you zoom out of the VIX and go to like our 4-hour or daily, what you'll see is that we have a falling wedge, and we'll see if we get a breakout above this. We have to get back above 28 for this to get a breakout. We need some confirmation. However, the dollar looks bullish. It has an inverse head and shoulders, and this does typically favor downside for the markets. It should be pushing to 101, and we'll see what this leads to. So given the fact that big tech is selling off, that's favoring that the market might dip a little bit tomorrow morning. We might be seeing a little bit more downside for 555 on SPY and potentially all the way down towards like 475 to 478 on the QQQ. So there might be some downside coming, but despite the downside, Whether or not we get a big sell off is also going to depend on our unemployment numbers. So we'll see what that leads to. Anyways, that is it for my video. I thank you all so much for listening. I know this video is kind of late because I was waiting for the earnings to come out and some more data. So with that being said, with everything that's going on, the market is showing some weakness. So I just want to give you guys a warning about that. And there's going to be a risk of some more downside heading into tomorrow. So make sure you watch your levels very closely. And we'll have to see how things end up going, especially as time goes on. Thank you for listening, guys. Please have a very, very good rest of your day. Like I said before, I'll be back with another update very soon to help you guys out. And we'll just have to see how things end up going. Thank you for listening. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and peace out.